A soldier assigned to guard a noble's daughter discovers she's not fragile, but a sharp political strategist. The vast expanse of space stretched out before Captain Jason Vane as the shuttle neared the grand space station Celestia. It was a place of political intrigue where the most powerful families in the galaxy gathered to negotiate, plot, and conspire. But today it wasn't just about politics. Jason's mission was clear. He had been assigned to protect Lady Isolde Salgar, the daughter of Lord Varric Salgar, the patriarch of one of the most influential families in the universe. As the shuttle docked with the colossal station, Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. Celestia wasn't just a hub for political power, it was a powder keg one waiting for the spark that could set off an explosion of conflict. And Isolde Salgar, with her regal bearing and noble lineage, was right in the heart of it. The doors slid open, and there she was stepping off the shuttle with the elegance of someone who had been raised for greatness. Lady Isolde Salgar, a woman of undeniable beauty and poise, walked with a quiet confidence. Her features were striking, sharp, intelligent eyes, a face sculpted like that of a statue, and long dark hair that cascaded down her back in smooth waves. Her physique was slender, but carried the quiet strength of someone accustomed to power. She wore a sleek black uniform adorned with intricate silver patterns, the insignia of the Salgar family embossed on her shoulder, a constant reminder of the weight of her name. Jason stood at attention as she approached, his eyes following her every movement, noticing the way she carried herself. There was something about her, something that didn't quite match her seemingly delicate appearance. She was beautiful, no doubt, but there was a coldness to her, an air of calculation that Jason found unsettling. It was as if she knew exactly how to use her charm to manipulate those around her. But maybe he was reading too much into it. After all, she was just a noblewoman, a daughter of one of the galaxy's most powerful families. As Isolde drew nearer, Jason offered a curt nod, his voice steady but carrying an underlying tension. "Lady Salgar," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "It's an honor to serve as your protector." Isolde's lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes locking with his for a brief moment before she responded, her voice smooth and confident. "Captain Vane, I trust you will do your duty well," she replied, her gaze holding a subtle challenge, as though daring him to question her words. Jason couldn't shake the feeling that she was sizing him up, measuring him against some standard he hadn't yet figured out. Was she just another spoiled noblewoman, or was there more to her than met the eye? He cleared his throat and straightened up his mind, already working through the possible threats she might face. He had seen political maneuvering before, but Celestia was a different beast entirely. It was a place where deals were made in the shadows, where allegiances were as fragile as glass. And Isolde Salgar, with her impeccable lineage and position, was bound to have enemies who would do anything to see her fall. "We'll make sure you're kept safe," Lady Salgar, Jason assured her, though in the back of his mind he couldn't help but wonder how far he would have to go to protect her, and whether the true danger lay in her enemies or in her own family. As they walked down the sleek corridors of Celestia, Jason couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation bearing down on him. The station was teeming with activity, but underneath the surface he sensed an undercurrent of danger, a quiet tension that seemed to be building with every passing moment. He had been trained for this, of course, trained to guard important figures, to neutralize threats before they became serious. But something about this assignment felt different. It wasn't just about keeping her alive. It was about navigating the labyrinth of power, manipulation, and deceit that defined the world of the Salgar family. And Jason knew deep down that he wasn't just here to protect her. He was here because someone believed that Isolde Salgar was a key player in the galaxy's political game. But whether she was a pawn or a queen, Jason couldn't yet tell. Isolde turned to him as they approached the security hub, her voice soft but laced with something sharper beneath the surface. "Tell me, Captain," she said, her gaze unwavering, "do you truly believe I'm in danger here? Or is this just another game the Salgar family's playing?" Jason met her eyes, the question hanging in the air between them. He hadn't expected her to be so direct, but he wasn't about to reveal his suspicions just yet. "There are always risks in these situations, Lady Salgar," he replied carefully, "especially when power's at stake." Her smile remained, but Jason noticed the subtle shift in her expression, an almost imperceptible flicker of amusement. "Power," she repeated, "is indeed a dangerous thing. And with that, they entered the secure zone, and Jason's unease grew. He didn't know what to make of her, whether she was just a naive noblewoman caught in a game far beyond her control, or whether she was playing everyone around her, including him. As the door slid shut behind them, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this assignment was going to be much more complicated than he had anticipated. Jason and Isolde were caught up in a sudden attack aboard the space station, leaving Jason suspicious that something was amiss. The attack came without warning, a barrage of explosions shaking the entire station. The lights flickered, then went out entirely for a brief moment before emergency red lights began to flash. The attackers were a group of 5 dressed in dark tactical suits that blended perfectly with the shadows. Their faces were hidden by sleek black helmets, and they moved with military precision. Their weapons were pulse rifles, the kind known for their deadly efficiency in close-quarters combat. Jason immediately activated his comms, but the signal was jammed. He reached for his weapon, a sleek plasma pistol, and took up a defensive stance, his instincts kicking in. The attackers spread out, flanking them on both sides, forcing Jason and Isolde to move. "Stay close, Lady Salgar," Jason commanded, his voice low but firm. "Don't let them separate us." Isolde nodded, her expression calm and collected, a stark contrast to the chaos around them. She didn't appear frightened, instead moving with purpose, as if she had rehearsed this scenario countless times. They retreated through the narrow corridors, Jason constantly scanning their surroundings, his gun ready in his hand. One of the attackers suddenly appeared around a corner, raising his rifle. Without hesitation, Jason fired the plasma shot, hitting the man square in the chest. He dropped instantly. The remaining 4 split up, 2 of them advancing, while the others took cover and fired. The situation was becoming increasingly dire, and Jason realized that this wasn't just a random attack. This was orchestrated, calculated. "They're after you," Jason muttered to himself, more certain now. "But why?" Isolde, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke. "This is no random attack, Captain. It's a message. Someone wants me dead." Jason looked at her sharply, his mind racing. He had always known that Isolde was involved in the political game, but this was something else. She wasn't just a victim, she was part of something bigger. "Who would want to kill you?" Jason asked, his voice taut with suspicion. "It's not just me, Captain," Isolde replied, her eyes steely and calculating. "This is about my family, the Salgars, and someone wants to use me as a pawn in their game." Jason's mind spun. He had heard rumors about family politics in the Salgar household, but this was more than he had imagined. "But you're not a pawn, are you?" Jason asked, his voice almost a whisper. "Not anymore," Isolde replied, a faint smile on her lips. "I've learned to play the game, Captain, and now I'm the one holding the cards." They reached a secured exit, but as Jason reached for the control panel, the remaining attackers blocked their path. A standoff ensued, both sides poised to strike. "We won't let you escape," one of the attackers sneered, his voice muffled by the helmet. Jason's eyes narrowed. "You'll have to kill me first." Isolde stepped forward, her voice icy. "We will escape, and you will fail. Because in the end, you're just pawns, and we are the ones who control the game." At that moment, the station's emergency response team arrived, forcing the attackers to retreat. Jason and Isolde made their way to the secure area, but Jason's mind was still racing. As they settled into a temporary safe room, Isolde began to open up more. "My father, Lord Varric Salgar, is not the only one pulling strings. The Salgars are involved in a larger game, and I'm caught in the middle." Jason listened, but the puzzle pieces weren't fitting. Was she just a pawn, or was she the one playing the game? "But why now?" Jason asked, his confusion evident. "Why are they trying to kill you here now?" "Because the game has changed, Captain," Isolde replied, her voice tinged with something darker. "And now everyone is watching." Jason's mind was spinning. He wasn't sure who to trust anymore. All he knew was that his duty as her protector was about to become much more complicated. Jason and Isolde had successfully escaped the attackers, temporarily letting them go. Jason could have taken them out, but to ensure Isolde's safety, he had to lead her to escape. As they made their way through the station, Jason's mind was racing. He was increasingly aware that those he trusted might also be hiding important secrets. Lieutenant Mira, his close teammate, wasn't just a bodyguard. In fact, she had a deep connection with the Salgar family. Jason spotted her standing in the shadows of the storage room, speaking quietly into a comm device. her conversation cryptic and filled with mystery. Jason felt a surge of unease. He knew Mira well, but this behavior, it wasn't just out of character. It was a breach of trust. He had always believed she was loyal, but now doubts began to creep in. Isolde finally spoke, breaking the tension. It's not random, Captain. The attack wasn't just about killing me. It's a part of something much bigger, a plan to control my family's power. Horror. Jason's heart raced. He hadn't expected this. His thoughts swirled with confusion, disbelief, and a deep sense of betrayal. What do you mean? Jason asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and growing anger. What kind of plan are you talking about? Isolde took a deep breath before speaking again. The Salgar family isn't just a family, Captain. We control more than you realize. This attack, it was staged. Everything has been orchestrated to test my enemies and consolidate my position. Jason's mind reeled, but he kept his composure. You're telling me this was all part of your plan? You let them attack you. Isolde's eyes locked with his, her gaze unyielding. Yes, I had to. It's the only way to gain the upper hand. My enemies are watching, and now I need to make them think they've won. Only then can I strike. Jason's blood ran cold. This wasn't the Isolde he had come to know. His trust in her and everything he had believed about this mission was starting to crumble. So I'm just a pawn in your game. Jason's voice was laced with bitterness. Isolde looked at him, the faintest flicker of regret in her eyes. No, Captain. You're more than that. You're the key to my success. But you need to understand that this is bigger than both of us. Just then Jason heard the faintest sound, footsteps. He turned quickly, drawing his weapon. Mira was standing in the doorway, her posture tense. I knew you'd find out, Mira said, her voice steady but tinged with a hint of something darker. Mira, what is this? Jason demanded, his eyes narrowing. Are you part of this too? Mira took a step forward, her eyes locked on Jason's. Everything Isolde has done, every move, has been part of a long-term plan. And yes, I've been involved in it from the beginning. The Salgar family has more power than you could ever imagine, and we intend to use that power to shape the future of this galaxy. Jason stood frozen, his world shattering around him. He had thought he was protecting Isolde, but now it seemed he was just another piece in a much larger game. I didn't sign up for this, Jason muttered, his hands shaking as he holstered his weapon. I don't know who I'm fighting for anymore. You're fighting for the future, Captain, Isolde said, her voice steady but resolute. And you're going to need to choose stay with me or walk away. Jason hesitated, torn between his loyalty to Isolde and his growing mistrust. The stakes had changed, and he wasn't sure which side he was on anymore. As the tension between them grew, Jason realized the stakes of this political game were far higher than he had ever imagined. And Isolde Salgar, for better or worse, was now the center of it all. In a tense meeting between the families, Jason and Isolde's relationship began to develop in the midst of dangerous political maneuvering, a strange bond neither of them fully understood. They both realized that they needed each other to survive in this web of intrigue and deceit. Isolde's ambitions went beyond personal gain. She wanted to reshape the entire power structure of the Salgar family, all for the future of her house. Jason started developing feelings for Isolde, but at the same time he was filled with doubt about her true intentions. He still wasn't sure if he could trust her plan. They faced difficult challenges together, including betrayal from those closest to them. The tension between the families continued to rise, making every decision more critical. Jason and Isolde were faced with a choice between power and love, as they both realized that their relationship could change everything. You know, Captain, Isolde said quietly, her voice filled with an unsettling calm. This is bigger than just us. It's about more than survival. It's about the future of my family, my legacy. Jason watched her carefully, his mind torn between admiration and suspicion. I don't know if I can trust all of this, he said, his voice low but firm. You don't have to trust all of it. Captain, Isolde replied, her eyes locking with his. But you must trust me. I'm the only one who can see the path forward for us. Jason felt a pang of doubt twist inside him. Could he trust her? Was he really just a pawn in her game? And what if I don't want to be a part of your plan? Isolde? Jason asked, his voice tense. What if I just want to walk away from this all Isolde's face softened for a moment, but only for a moment. You can walk away if you choose, Captain. But understand this, there's no going back. You'll either stand with me, or you'll be swept aside by the tides of history. Jason looked away, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. And what if I stand with you? He asked quietly, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. Isolde stepped closer, her voice softer now. Then we change everything, Captain. We change the game. The Salgar family's future is in our hands now, and I won't let anyone take it from us. Jason felt the weight of her words, the pressure mounting. He didn't know if he could trust her fully, but he also knew that without her, he was lost. I've been in wars, Captain, Isolde continued, her voice steady. But this is different. We're not fighting just for survival. We're fighting for control. Jason looked at her, and for a moment he saw something beyond the strategist, something more human, more vulnerable. And what if we fail? Jason asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Then we fail together. Isolde said, her eyes meeting his with a resolve he hadn't expected. But we will not fail, not if we stand together. Jason's heart raced. He wasn't sure what to think anymore, but one thing was clear, he was in too deep now. There was no turning back. As they left the room, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The political game was no longer just a game, it was their lives. As the Salgar family was drawn into a bloody political war, Jason found himself not only as a protector, but also as a key strategist. The political landscape was becoming more dangerous by the day. The Salgar family was under heavy pressure from rival political factions who sought to undermine their power and position. These factions, with their own agendas, were trying to isolate the Salgars from their allies, using both public and covert methods to tarnish their reputation. But that was just the surface. Isolde revealed to Jason that this political war was far deeper than anyone had anticipated, and there were hidden forces at play. This is just the beginning. Captain, Isolde said, her voice cold as she looked out the window of their safe house. My family is being pushed into a corner, and I will do whatever it takes to get us out of it. Jason watched her, his gaze heavy with uncertainty. He had never imagined he would be caught in the center of such a vicious political struggle. Isolde was using every possible tactic to ensure her family could gain ultimate power. At the very least, she had to suppress the enemies of her house. Jason and Isolde worked closely together, coordinating their strategies to handle the threats posed by the rival families. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about winning the war, no matter what the cost. Their relationship became increasingly complicated as they faced espionage and betrayal from those they trusted most. Jason began to question everything he thought he knew about the political games the Salgars were playing. I didn't sign up for this, Jason said one night, his voice low and full of frustration. I didn't ask for any of this. I'm just a soldier. This is someone else's war. I know, Captain, Isolde responded softly, her eyes not meeting his. But you're already in it, and now you're part of this fight, whether you like it or not. Jason paused, his thoughts swirling. He had never wanted to be part of this world of politics and intrigue, but now he was too deeply entangled to back out. I didn't ask for this, he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. But I'm still here. Why? Because you have no choice, Captain, Isolde said, her voice steely. The war's already here, and we fight not because we want to, but because we must. Jason looked at her, his mind still wrestling with his feelings. He didn't want to be a part of the Salgar family's fight, but in the end he knew that the fate of both Isolde and himself were now linked inextricably. As they moved forward with their plans, Jason and Isolde had to make difficult decisions, all with the aim of ensuring the survival of the Salgar family and their hold on power. The question loomed over them: could they navigate this treacherous political battlefield and still protect what mattered most to them? Can we really win this war, Jason? Isolde asked one night, her voice softer than before. Can we protect our family and still hold on to who we are? Jason looked at her, his expression unreadable. He wasn't sure of the answer, but he knew one thing for certain: if they were going to survive, they would have to fight together. The tension between duty and personal feelings had never been more tangible. Captain Jason Vane, the ever-reliable protector of Lady Isolde Salgar, found himself standing at the crossroads of loyalty, love, and survival. He had spent countless hours safeguarding her, but tonight things were different. The air around him crackled with the weight of his inner turmoil. The choice between duty to his family, his responsibility to the mission, and his growing attachment to Isolde was becoming a matter of life and death. In the dimly lit corridors of the Celestia space station, where greenish lights flickered faintly, the sudden attack took place. Jason and Isolde were moving through an area with little traffic where weak lights cast strange shadows in the silence. There were no signs of danger yet, but Jason felt an unsettling wave of unease rise within him. It was as if something was off in instinct, that something wasn't right. Suddenly, the sound of hurried footsteps and whispered voices in the shadows made him alert. Just moments later, the sharp crack of gunshots shattered the silence. A group of assassins stepped out from the darkness, their black cloaks blending into the night. One of them lunged forward, aiming directly at Isolde. Jason had no time to think, only the reflexes of a seasoned soldier. He threw himself in front of her, shielding her. A bullet zipped by, grazing his neck. Jason's body froze, his pain searing through his muscles, but he had no time to dwell on the wound that was beginning to bleed from his shoulder. Isolde hastily dodged, her hands trembling as she saw Jason wounded. She could no longer think of her own treachery in the past, only one overwhelming feeling: Jason was protecting her, even though he now knew she was not the innocent victim he had once thought. He struggled to stand, one hand gripping his weapon, the other pressed to the wound. His eyes remained on Isolde, protecting her from every new wave of attack from the lurking assassins. Despite his injury growing more severe, Jason couldn't let go of his duty. "I won't let them kill you," Jason muttered, his breath ragged. "Jason," Isolde whispered, her eyes speaking what words could not. The two of them stood there alone in the chaos. Despite all the scheming, despite the complex political web she had woven in that moment, survival and the bond between them were all that mattered. They both realized that they could no longer live without each other, even in a world full of politics, betrayal, and death. As the last wave of attackers was defeated, the two stood together, supporting one another. Jason had fought with all his remaining strength, though his body was near the point of collapse. But the look in his eyes said it all. Nothing could tear them apart. They had gone too deep into their feelings for one another to turn back now. However, the tension was far from over. As the assassins were neutralized, larger questions began to arise. Could this love truly survive in a world full of scheming and betrayal? Jason had to face the truth that he may just be a pawn in the power game of the Salgar family. Isolde, though she had feelings for him, could not separate herself from the political machinations her family had set in motion. Their relationship could no longer be just love. It was also a part of a political strategy. Their love was being torn between family loyalty and the inevitable sacrifices. Jason, in his pain and fatigue, had to ask himself, could he continue protecting Isolde, or would he abandon it all to live freely? Everything was pushing him into a corner where he had to choose between love for Isolde and duty to the family, or perhaps he would be the one to betray her, leaving this love behind to protect his own ideals. In the end, Jason could not say a word. He could only look into Isolde's eyes, where love and determination blended together. He knew that the fight within him had only just begun. Lord Varric Salgar returned to the Celestia space station, and as expected, he demanded a private meeting with Jason. The air in the meeting room was thick with tension as Jason stepped inside. The cold metallic walls of the room mirrored the conflict raging inside him. Jason had been through countless battles, but this was different. It wasn't just his life at stake anymore. It was his future, his loyalty, and the woman he had come to love. Sitting across from Jason, Varric wasted no time with pleasantries. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Jason's with a piercing gaze. "I've been keeping an eye on Isolde, Varric," began his voice, calm, but laden with a sense of authority. "I know all of her plans, Jason, but I've been silent watching her make her move. She's clever, more than I ever gave her credit for." Jason's heart raced, but he remained stoic, his jaw clenched. He had always respected Varric, but there was something in the way Varric spoke now that made his stomach twist. The fact that Varric was speaking as if he already knew everything about Isolde's schemes made Jason realize the stakes had escalated. "I've watched her long enough to know what she's capable of." Varric continued, leaning forward slightly, his fingers steepled on the table. "She's a master of strategy, but more than that, she has ambition. and ambition, Jason. Ambition is dangerous. It blinds people to the cost of their actions. Jason's fist tightened, the words sinking in. He had suspected that Isolde was playing a deeper game, but hearing Varric say it so bluntly made everything feel real and worse. It felt like he was a part of it. She's made her choices and now she expects loyalty, but she also expects sacrifice. Jason Varric's voice grew colder, more cutting. And sacrifice is something you can't take lightly, not if you want to survive in this game. Jason could feel his pulse quicken, his body tensing. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in, as Varric's words continued to hang in the air. "And what of me?" Varric, Jason asked, his voice tight, barely containing his frustration. "What do you expect from me? I've already made my loyalty clear." Varric leaned in closer, his eyes never leaving Jason's. "I expect you to choose Jason, to choose between Isolde and your future." His voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. "You've proven yourself in battle, but that's not enough. Not for someone who will lead, not for someone who will inherit a legacy." Jason's chest tightened. The weight of the decision bore down on him, the tension so palpable that it seemed to crush the air from his lungs. Varric wasn't just offering him a choice. He was putting his entire future on the line. "What's your point?" Varric, Jason demanded, his voice sharp with frustration. "Are you telling me I have to choose between her and the galaxy?" Varric's gaze never wavered. "I'm telling you that loyalty to Isolde comes at a cost. She is not just a woman, she is the future of Salgar. If you want to stand with her, you will have to stand against the Union and against everything you've ever fought for. Are you ready to make that sacrifice?" The silence between them was deafening. Jason's mind raced, but there was no answer he could give. His heart ached, torn between the woman he loved and the duty he had sworn to uphold. The galaxy, his career, his ideals, it all felt so distant now. "Choose Jason." Varric's voice was a low growl now, almost mocking. "You're a soldier, yes, but you're not just fighting for Isolde now. You're fighting for something much bigger, something that will define who you are for the rest of your life. Don't think you can walk both paths." Jason stood up slowly, his fists clenched at his sides, his breath coming in shallow gasps. His thoughts swirled in chaos, the weight of the decision pressing on him harder than ever. "I have to make a choice," he muttered to himself. "But what kind of man will I be after this?" As the meeting ended, Varric's final words hung in the air like a shadow. "Think carefully, Jason. Your love or your future. Choose wisely." Jason left the room, his mind in turmoil. The question lingered in his mind, echoing like a warning. Could he truly choose between love and duty? And if so, what kind of man would he become in the process? Jason sat in the dimly lit room, his heart pounding painfully in his chest. He had never felt more uncertain, more conflicted in his life. The walls around him seemed to close in the silence, pressing against his mind. His hands trembled slightly as he sat across from Isolde, unable to shake the feeling that everything he had believed in, everything he had fought for, was about to come crashing down. "Jason," Isolde said softly, her voice unusually calm, but there was something in it that made Jason's stomach churn. "There's something I need to tell you, something you won't like to hear, but it's the truth." Jason's brows furrowed, his mind racing. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice laced with concern, though the rising tension made it hard to breathe. Every word she said felt like it was leading him deeper into a maze he couldn't escape from. Isolde looked down for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts before looking back at Jason, her eyes steady. "The attack on me was never meant to be real," she said quietly, each word seeming to pierce Jason's heart like a knife. "It was part of a larger strategy, a strategy that was always in motion long before you came into the picture." Jason's eyes widened, shock and disbelief flooding him. You faked the attack?" he asked, his voice trembling, a sense of betrayal coursing through him. His breath caught in his throat, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. He had fought for her, protected her, and this was what she had been doing. Isolde nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady but cold. "I needed to create the illusion of vulnerability. I wanted everyone to think I was weak, a target. That way the media would be forced to focus on me, question everyone around me, and place the blame on my enemies. I used the attack to manipulate the narrative, Jason felt as if the ground had been ripped out from beneath him. He stood frozen, trying to make sense of what he was hearing, his body shaking with a mix of disbelief and anger. You used me. You used all of us. His voice was barely a whisper, but the hurt was clear. Isolde stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. Yes, she said, her voice soft but resolute. I'm not just protecting my family, Jason. I'm changing the game. I'm taking control of the future. Salgar will not just survive, we will thrive. We will be the top family in the galaxy, and nothing will stand in our way. Jason's chest tightened, his heart beating wildly in his chest. His mind spun, caught between his feelings for Isolde and the overwhelming sense of betrayal gnawing at him. How could she do this? How could she manipulate everything, including him? His hands clenched into fists, his nails digging into his palms. You've been using me from the start, Jason said through gritted teeth, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. I thought I was protecting you, but now I see I was just a tool in your plan. A pawn in your game of power. Isolde's expression didn't change, though a flicker of something regret maybe passed through her eyes. I didn't want to deceive you, Jason, but you're part of this now. You've been a key player, and there's no turning back. Jason felt the anger and betrayal well up inside him, but beneath it all was a deep ache in his chest. He had fought for her, had risked everything for her, and now to hear her admit that he had been nothing more than a pawn, his world seemed to be crumbling. What's the cost of this, Isolde? Jason asked, his voice cracking. What do I have to give up to stand by your side? My loyalty, my ideals, my future. Isolde's gaze softened for just a moment, but it was brief. You have to choose, Jason. You've always known that, she said quietly. You have to choose between love and duty, between Isolde and Salgar, between everything you fought for and everything you could become. Jason felt a wave of conflicting emotions wash over him. He was caught between the woman he loved, the ideals he had always fought for, and the undeniable truth that Isolde's plans would shape not only her future, but his as well. He clenched his fists, standing on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. You're asking me to choose, Jason whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. But what kind of man will I be if I choose you? Isolde stood up, stepping closer to him. You'll be the man who takes control of his destiny, Jason. The man who stands with me, who stands with Salgar, and who chooses power over weakness. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. And if I can't choose, he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Isolde's face hardened. Then, Jason, you will be nothing. Jason stood alone in his room, staring out the window. The vast expanse of space stretched before him, the cold emptiness, a reflection of the void within him. His mind raced with the weight of the decision he had to make. On one side there was Isolde, the woman he had come to love, who had shared her truth with him. On the other there was the Salgar family, the legacy he had sworn to protect. His heart wavered, torn between duty and desire. His fingers brushed against the cold glass of the window, and he let out a long, shaky breath. How did it come to this? He whispered to himself. The choice seemed impossible, but he knew he had to make it. His loyalty had always been to those he trusted, but now Isolde's revelations made everything unclear. She wasn't just playing a game of politics. She was changing the entire fabric of power in the galaxy. Could he stand by her side in this grand scheme? The memory of that moment in the corridor when he had taken the bullet for her flashed before his eyes. He had risked his life to protect her, but was it truly for love, or had he simply been another pawn in a game much larger than he could have imagined? Jason felt the weight of his oath to the Salgar family, yet the pull of Isolde's ambition and determination was undeniable. She had a vision, one that could change everything, and he could either be a part of it or walk away. But walking away meant abandoning everything he had fought for. He turned his gaze back to the stars outside. The lights of distant systems shimmered faintly like little sparks of hope in the void. But Jason couldn't find any hope in them. All he saw were the two paths laid before him, the family he had sworn to protect and the woman he had come to love. Which one would he choose? Was it even possible to have both? He didn't know if he could live with the consequences of either decision. Meanwhile, in another room on the station, Isolde stood by her window staring out at the same vastness that Jason was gazing at. The cold emptiness of space seemed to reflect her own feelings. Her heart ached, but she knew she couldn't let it show. She had to be strong, not just for herself, but for the Salgar family. But deep inside, there was a war raging. Her emotions, her love for Jason were at odds with the ambition that drove her. She had never thought she would be faced with such a choice, but now it was unavoidable. Salgar needed her to be ruthless, to make the hard decisions, to put the family's legacy above all else. But Jason had been there for her in ways no one else had. The way he had protected her without question, the way he had risked his life for her, it had shaken something inside of her. She sighed softly, leaning her forehead against the cool glass. "What have I become?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What if I choose Salgar and lose everything I feel for him?" Her heart was torn, but she couldn't allow herself to show it. She had to choose, just like Jason did. The room fell silent again as both of them, separated by space but united in their internal turmoil, faced the same dilemma. The universe was vast, but their decisions would have ripples far beyond the stars. For Jason, it was about finding his own truth, about deciding if his loyalty to Isolde was worth the cost of everything else. For Isolde, it was about ensuring Salgar's place at the top, no matter the personal sacrifices. Jason took a deep breath, feeling as if the weight of the galaxy was on his shoulders. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them to look at the stars once more. There was no easy answer. There was only the decision he had to make. "I have to choose," Jason muttered, as if trying to convince himself. "But what kind of man will I be afterward?" Jason sat alone in his quarters, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on his chest. His mind felt like a battlefield torn between his duty to the Salgar family and the woman he loved. The stars outside the window seemed distant, like a reminder of how far he was from the simple life he had once imagined. His hands trembled as he reached for a glass of water, the cool touch of the glass not soothing the fire inside him. "I can't keep doing this," Jason muttered to himself. "I can't keep being torn between her and everything I've fought for." His voice cracked slightly as he spoke, a realization sinking in. The love he felt for Isolde was undeniable, but it was clear now that standing by her meant abandoning everything else. Meanwhile, in her private quarters, Isolde stood by the large window, her back turned to the room. The stars outside were dim and distant, much like her heart felt in this moment. She had been the architect of her destiny, but now with Jason's love and the Salgar legacy hanging in the balance, the weight of the decision was suffocating. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a shaky breath, before speaking aloud. "Can I have both? Can I have love and power? Or will one of them destroy me?" Her voice was filled with uncertainty, something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Jason's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Isolde, I've been thinking. If I stand by you, I lose everything I fought for. But if I walk away, I lose you. And that's something I'm not sure I can live with." His words were thick with the weight of the choice before him. Isolde's voice trembled as she spoke, but she tried to steady herself. "Jason, I've been fighting for Salgar's power my entire life. But when I look at you, I feel something I've never felt before. I've tried so hard to keep it buried, but now I don't know if I can let it go." Jason clenched his fists, feeling the deep conflict within him. "I never wanted this, Isolde. I never wanted to be a part of this game. But I am, and I don't know if I can choose between you and what's right." Isolde closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I know, Jason. I never wanted to drag you into this world, but now you're part of it, and so am I." She stepped closer to him, her hand reaching out almost as if she couldn't bear the distance between them any longer. Jason's heart broke at the sight of her vulnerability, but he knew he couldn't let himself be consumed by it. "You say we're part of this game, Isolde, but can we really control the game, or are we just pawns like everyone else?" His words were laced with doubt. Isolde's eyes glinted with a new determined fire. "I will never be just a pawn, and neither will you." Her voice was strong, but the ache in her chest was evident. "I can't ask you to choose between me and what you believe in, but I can't lose you, Jason. Not now." Jason looked into her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. He was on the edge of losing everything. "Then what do we do now?" he asked softly, his voice a mixture of fear and hope. Isolde took a deep breath, her hand finding his. We fight, Jason. We fight for what we believe in. Together. Her voice softened, but there was a resolve in it that Jason couldn't ignore. Jason stood there holding her hand, the decision made. They had chosen each other despite the impossible odds. And as the stars outside shimmered in the vastness of space, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The political war between the Salgar family and their rivals had escalated to new heights. The once stable power dynamics of the galaxy were now in turmoil, with rival families using every tactic at their disposal to discredit and dismantle the Salgar legacy. The media was flooded with accusations, with false stories about corruption, abuse of power, and betrayal making headlines on every major station. But despite the smear campaigns, despite the constant attacks, the Salgar family maintained their composure. Thanks to Isolde's brilliant strategies, every blow against their reputation was countered, swiftly leaving their enemies scrambling for leverage. Isolde had become a master of political warfare, her every move calculated and precise. Jason, now more than just a soldier, had become an essential strategist in the war. He worked side by side with Isolde, understanding her plans and anticipating their enemies' moves. Their bond, their deep understanding of each other, made them a formidable team. We need to strike fast, Jason said one day, as he and Isolde pored over the latest intelligence reports. If we give them too much time, they'll recover, and we'll be back to square one. Isolde nodded, her eyes sharp as she analyzed the data in front of her. Agreed. We'll use their overconfidence against them. They think they have the upper hand, but they're blind to the truth. They'll never see us coming. Together, they devised a plan to expose the weaknesses of their rivals. Isolde used their own enemies' pride against them, leaking information that made them appear corrupt and inept, while at the same time bolstering the reputation of Salgar through carefully orchestrated media campaigns. Jason coordinated the logistics of the operations, leading covert missions and ensuring that the family's interests were always protected. But as the political war raged on, Jason began to notice something troubling. He realized that no one around him was truly loyal, not even those closest to him. Every member of Salgar's inner circle had their own agenda, their own ambitions, their own secrets. And some of those secrets were far darker than Jason had imagined. We can't trust anyone, can we? Jason muttered one night as he and Isolde reviewed the latest intel. Isolde's expression hardened, but she said nothing. She knew the truth, but she had learned long ago that in the world of political power, loyalty was a luxury few could afford. As the war continued, they faced more and more dangerous enemies. Espionage, assassination attempts, and sabotage became a daily part of their lives. But through it all, they stood side by side, unyielding in their resolve to protect Salgar's future. Jason knew the stakes had never been higher. Every move, every decision he made could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. We've come too far to stop now, Isolde said one night, her eyes meeting his with a look that was both fierce and tender. We've made our choices. Now we finish what we started. The political war finally came to an end, with Salgar standing victorious. But the cost was immense. Lives had been lost, families shattered, and the very foundation of the galaxy had been altered forever. Jason and Isolde stood at the edge of a new world, one they had fought to create, but they both knew that everything had changed. After the political war, the Salgar family had emerged stronger than ever. With control over the galaxy's most valuable energy resources, they had become a powerhouse in both politics and industry. This power, coveted by many other political figures, elevated their status to a level few could challenge. Isolde, having proven herself as a brilliant strategist, had taken her place at the head of the family. Jason, now more than just a protector, stood beside her as her loyal companion, working with her to solidify Salgar's dominance. Together, they no longer had doubts about each other. They had found their shared purpose, and with it a new understanding that allowed them to move forward with confidence. We've come a long way, Jason, Isolde said one evening, looking out over the expansive view of the Salgar estate from her new office. This was all just a dream a few years ago. Now we've made it a reality. Jason, standing by her side, gazed at the distant horizon. We've fought for this, Isolde, but with this power comes responsibility. And I'm not sure the universe will sit quietly while we build our empire. Isolde's expression softened as she turned to face him. I know the cost, Jason, but I also know that without this power, we'd have no future. The galaxy is constantly changing, and if we don't act now, someone else will take what's ours. The two of them understood the weight of their words. The future was now in their hands, but with it came the burden of leadership, the pressure to maintain control. Jason knew that this was the life he had chosen, even if it meant sacrificing the simpler dreams he once had. "I never thought I'd find myself here," Jason admitted. "I always believed in fighting for what's right. But now I'm not sure what that means anymore." Isolde placed a hand on his arm, her grip firm but reassuring. "We are changing things, Jason. We're giving the galaxy a new order. Maybe it's not the perfect solution, but it's the only one we have." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I never wanted to be part of something like this, but I can't deny that I'm in it now, and I'll stand by you no matter the cost." Their relationship had grown even stronger in the aftermath of the war. They no longer questioned each other's motives, and they had learned to rely on one another in every decision. But with the newfound power came the realization that their journey was far from over. "We've built this empire, Jason," Isolde said, her eyes filled with determination. "But we need to protect it. There will always be those who want to take it from us." Jason gave a slight smile, though his eyes betrayed the worry he felt. "And we'll fight for it, Isolde. Together." They both knew that the galaxy would continue to change and that the challenges would never cease. But as long as they had each other, they believed they could overcome anything. As Isolde took her place at the head of the Salgar family, she understood the price of power. It was a constant battle, one that would never end. But it was a battle she was willing to fight because she knew that together with Jason, she could hold her ground. The Salgar family stood firm, their power secure, but the galaxy would continue to change. Their story was far from over. After the dust of the political war had settled, Isolde and Jason stood at the helm of the Salgar family, but the future remained uncertain. The galaxy had changed, and with it the balance of power was fragile. They had emerged victorious, but the question loomed large: could they maintain their grip on power? Isolde turned to Jason one evening as they stood in her private office overlooking the sprawling estate below. The vastness of their power and the weight of their responsibilities hung heavily in the air. "Do you think we can hold on to this, Jason? Will we be able to protect what we've built?" Jason looked out the window, his gaze distant. "I don't know, Isolde. The universe doesn't stop changing, and neither do our enemies. But we have each other, and for now that's enough." Just then the door to the office opened, and Lord Varric Salgar entered. He looked older now, the years of leadership weighing on him, but his expression was one of reluctant approval. "Isolde, Jason," he said, nodding his head. "I've been watching you both. You've done well. You've proved yourselves to me and to the family." Jason looked at Varric, surprised by his words. "Thank you, my lord," he said respectfully. "I've done nothing but help the family. It was the least I could do." Varric nodded slowly, his stern face softening just a bit. "I have come to realize that you are not just a soldier, Jason. You are a man of integrity, and you have earned my respect. You've earned a place in this family." Isolde stood beside Jason, her hand lightly brushing his. "I always knew he would come around," she said with a soft smile. "But thank you, Father. I know we still have much to prove, but we will continue to protect this family and ensure its future." Varric paused, his eyes softening for a brief moment. "You've already proven yourselves. You've kept Salgar standing strong, but now the real work begins." He turned to Jason with a slight smile. "You're going to be a part of this family now, and that includes everything good and bad." Jason nodded, understanding the weight of Varric's words. "I'm ready for it, my lord," he said, a sense of determination in his voice. "Whatever it takes, I'll stand by Isolde and the family." Varric turned to Isolde, his eyes full of pride. "You've done well, daughter. This family is in good hands. But remember, Isolde, power is always fleeting. You must be prepared for what comes next." Isolde's eyes darkened for a moment, but she nodded. "I know, Father. We're ready." After Varric left the room, Jason and Isolde stood in silence for a moment. They both knew that their position at the top was still fragile, and the future was uncertain. "What comes next, Isolde?" Jason asked, his voice low and filled with uncertainty. Isolde looked out the window, her face reflecting both hope and worry. "We keep fighting, Jason. We keep building. The galaxy is changing, and we must adapt. But no matter what happens, we will face it together." Jason took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. Together, he echoed, feeling the weight of their future, but also the strength of their resolve. They stood there looking out at the stars. The future was uncertain, but they knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, united in their love and ambition. The story of the Salgar family was far from over. A new chapter was just beginning. After everything, the story of Jason and Isolde ended on an open note. They had walked through countless trials together, and now they stood side by side, ready to face the future. The path ahead was filled with uncertainty, but they had proven themselves to each other, and together they had secured the future of Salgar. Salgar continued to grow and prosper, but the future still hung in the balance. New rivals emerged, and the galaxy itself seemed to shift constantly. But thanks to the strategic minds of Jason and Isolde, they had weathered the storm. "We've made it this far, but the road ahead is still uncertain," Jason said one evening, his eyes meeting Isolde's, with a quiet understanding. "There will always be more challenges, more enemies, more political games to play." Isolde nodded, her expression resolute but softened by the bond they had forged. "I know, Jason, but together we can face anything. No matter what comes our way, we'll fight for each other and for the future of Salgar." Their relationship, once uncertain, had grown stronger over time. The love they shared, built through trials and sacrifices, had become the foundation of their future. And yet they both knew that their journey was far from over. "We've had our share of challenges," Jason said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "But the worst is probably yet to come." Isolde's smile was soft but filled with determination. "No matter what happens, we face it together. That's what makes us strong." Jason looked at her, his eyes filled with both hope and apprehension. "You're right. Whatever happens, we'll face it side by side." Isolde took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We've already proven that we can't be defeated, but the real test will come when the galaxy tests us again." Jason nodded, a sense of resolve settling over him. "Then let's make sure we're ready for it." Hatum, the future of the galaxy remained uncertain. New alliances would form, and new enemies would emerge. But for Jason and Isolde, the most important thing was that they had each other. As they stood together gazing out at the stars, they knew that their love and ambition would guide them through whatever came next. And no matter how many obstacles they would face, they would always stand united because their story was far from over. "The galaxy is still full of mysteries," Isolde said, her voice soft but resolute. "And so is our story. We'll face it together," Jason replied, his voice steady. "Because no matter what happens, we're in this together. Always." The story of Jason and Isolde and the Salgar family had come to a close for now, but the galaxy was always changing. New chapters would be written, new battles fought, and the story would continue. Power and love would always be the forces that shaped their destiny, and together they would navigate the uncertain future ahead. The future of Jason and Isolde was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they would face it together. Through battles, sacrifices, and the constant struggle for power, they had found a bond stronger than anything the galaxy could throw at them. Isolde had fought for power her entire life, and now she was at the top. Jason had stood by her side not just as a protector, but as a partner. Together they had changed the course of history, but the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, and the Salgar family's power would always be threatened by those who sought to take it from them. But Jason and Isolde had something no one else did: each other. In the end, they knew that love and power would always be intertwined, and it was through their unity that they would continue to shape their destiny. The story was not over. It was just the beginning of a new chapter.